Good evening. This is the 9th part of this series. If you've been following along, you know what I'm about to say. However, if this is your first viewing of any of these installments, you're about to become very, very lost. Might I suggest you venture back to my initial offering, a video known as The Woman with 1.5 Hands, and then after enjoying it, that you then watch parts 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth, and that we meet back here in a little while? Anyway, I can't say I didn't try. Here's part 9, or reaching out versus being reached. Rape rates have approximately paralleled our population growth rates since we became a country. Paralleled, that is, up until recently. DNA was first used as an evidentiary device in a U.S. courtroom in 1987, and as it would happen, to help convict the rapist. Since then, if DNA is used in court, more than 74% of the time, it's for a case involving rape or sexual assault. At first, people on both sides of this DNA evidence were unaware of it being binding, legally, either to help convict or help exonerate. What happened between 1987 and the mid-90s was a lot of rapists thought they could get away with it, left DNA evidence behind, and were subsequently convicted. Rape accusers, on the other hand, and during the same period, discovered in 25% of all cases that the DNA evidence gathered from them exculpated the accused. One shudders to think of all the police lineups before 1987, where perhaps 25% of the time the wrong man got fingered and went to prison. But, thanks to DNA, things have gotten better. Now, if a misidentification happens, sure, we taxpayers have to pay for expensive DNA lab testing and pay the salaries of the rape squad, but at least we don't have to pay to incarcerate an innocent man. But then people became aware. Probably about the same percentage of Americans who grasp the concept that fingerprints can and are used as evidentiary devices grew to learn the same about DNA, and that this genetic evidence would be hard to argue against in court. Combine this new awareness with the steady increase in video cameras installed in public and private places, and impromptu rapes started falling, and have been falling ever since. In just the last few years, rape and many other types of crime, crimes against property, larceny, theft, burglary, vehicle theft, murder, aggravated assault, and more, have decreased even more so, what all with everyone with a cell phone also having a camera handy. And though they might appear to be safe asking the wife what she needs at the store, they are instead videotaping your attack. Or they might not be. Or they might be. It's the fear of getting caught, and that fear growing as a result of these two advances, DNA in court and cameras everywhere, that has contributed to the fall of rape rates relative to population growth rates. This is especially relevant, in my opinion, with regards to stranger rape rates drastically diving. Jaden and Tone missed stranger rape at 8%, but since the mid-90s, when they conducted their seminal research, I propose it's fallen further than that, if it ever was that high. Others list stranger rape at 4% or even lower. Estimates vary wildly for these percentages. This I discuss quite extensively in my notes. Just now, when I mentioned how we taxpayers have to pay the salaries of police officers assigned to the rape squad, perhaps some thought I said as much sarcastically or disdainfully, or that by my stating that such a large portion of their cases involve men who are falsely accused of rape, that I was perhaps hinting at the idea that we should disband these rape squads and put them to use solving real crimes. To those who took it that way, I did not mean to steer you down that path. The thing is, if we remove from their workload a good chunk of false claims, and 25% is not a negligible figure, then judges, prosecutors, and law enforcement officials can concentrate more of their efforts on rapists who aren't exculpated by DNA evidence, and then they'll have more time and energy to convict actual rapists. So with DNA in the courtroom, and represented by falling rape rates since 1993, many a rape that would have happened didn't. Yes, fewer convictions, but a larger percentage of those accused have ended up in prison, thanks at least in part to DNA. Smaller numbers, but more accurate numbers. I call that progress. I know that sounds boring to a lot of people who want more action. And though these punishment-oriented citizens, as differs from prevention-oriented citizens, say they don't want the rapes, what they want, whether they admit it or not, is to punish rapists. Others, myself included, would be satisfied if all the rapists would quit raping. If they're scared that their DNA will help convict them, and then they end up not raping because of this fear, I don't see what the problem is. Boring to some, but reassuring to others. And I think, though I'm not alone in this, see my notes, that easily the majority, and probably upwards of 90% of these punishment-centric folks want the rapist to keep on raping, just so long as this or that rapist gets his public comeuppance. Cherry on top of that sundae happens when they get to see that rapist being locked up and hear about that long stretch ahead of him, not to mention fantasize about him being hurt by guards and other prisoners. And of course, those who concentrate on the punishment phase of this activity don't personally want to be raped, probably don't want friends or relatives to be raped either. But if you could offer them the choice of A, 0 rapes everywhere, all attained via prevention and other boring methods, or B, rapes happen only to strangers and only in other states, and they get to watch the tortures and executions of the rapists, you give them that choice? And I think they'd be torn. Seriously, I think they'd actually debate this choice for a while, or maybe worse. Maybe some of them would quickly choose option B, when clearly option A, which is 0 rapes everywhere, has to be the way to go. I can't possibly be wrong about this, can I? To be clear, it's not like these punishers are any more or any less against rape than I am. We're all on the same team. We're all against rape. But if tomorrow rape ceased to occur, the day after tomorrow, they'd find some other boogeyman to beat up and kick at and exude their ill will toward. There's a road that travels from barbarism to civilization. Barbarians are still among us. Revenge still happens, even though in civilized nations we're supposed to let the law handle disputes for us. Emotions happen though. Should people be blamed for having emotional responses to rape? Of course not. A single person or a handful of people who fancy revenge over actually solving problems is something the rest of us can live with. A bigger problem happens, in my opinion, when TARICO, or the anti-rape industrial complex, comes along and, after processing a wide range of information about rape, spins its findings in such a way that more women end up getting raped than otherwise would have, as per the Walmart Arrowhead paradigm. So what about these members of TARICO? What's all this rape reduction doing to their psyches and to the wording of their future grant proposals? What about those who educate that rape is a lot more prevalent than people would like to think or acknowledge? What do? What's their reaction? It's not like members of TARICO can toot their own horns, or do they think they can? If key shaking has helped reduce rape, could it be that in a related or residual or in a metastasized sort of way, that this display of willingness to defend oneself also lowered the murder rate? Is it even possible that key shaking could have anything to do with a steady decline since the early 90s in crimes against property, or burglary, or car theft, or larceny? Most of these 4 types of crime happen when no one's around, let alone someone with an off-putting set of keys. And though it's possible, it's a bit of a stretch, I would think, that even one actual carjacking attempt has ever been thwarted solely by a determined and forthright shaking of a set of keys. But besides accepting or rejecting the accolades, what can associates of TARICO do about these alleged reductions in national rape rates? What they can do is one thing. What they are doing, for instance, is investigating gagging. Perhaps, they word their proposals, the husband or live-in boyfriend of a woman being surveyed just happened to be close by. Yes, he was near the phone during these rape questions, and that his presence effectively gagged. Speaking of being gagged, excuse me. Yes, he was near the phone during these rape questions, and that his presence effectively gagged her responses. TARICO researchers have asked for and continue to ask for federal tax dollars to study this so-called gagging, to study how it's yet another way that rape is underreported. During their interviews, if Jane and Tone thought someone was listening in on another line or might be in the room with the interviewee, they scheduled a callback interview, hoping to catch her when he wasn't around, assuming that an interviewee who doesn't come right out and say she was raped surely must be effectively gagged. Which reminds me, TARICO's recurring theme or mantra: only 1 in 5 rapes gets reported to the police. Most of this I covered in Part 8, concluding that video with what I propose is the second most salient reason as to why so few women report their rapes. Because if there were tulips in the rain or stratified rape shelters to escape to, then huge swaths of the populace would come forward, each woman telling the police that the middle or upper class man she's married to had raped her. Also helpful to those like me who really want to end rape would be changes in how binding a prenuptial contract is. Changes that reflect the notion that no matter what that prenup says, if he's convicted of raping her, she gets half or more. Again, if prenups could be thusly overridden, a lot more than 19.1% of the victims would call the cops. Which begs the question, what's the most salient reason why so few women report their rapes? Compared to what has to be said while talking to the police in person, there's a lot more freedom talking on the phone with a surveyor. Whereas there's a commitment of sorts that happens when the police become involved. A phone survey might end after a mere half hour. Are the police going to be male, sweating, balding, hulking, asking insinuating questions, insinuating that you weren't really raped? Nope, they'll be women, just like on the phone. Female rape victims are interviewed by female officers only. But are these female officers going to ask delicate questions? Sure, here's the way it works. You were raped and you call the police. A female officer asks you questions about what happened and you answer. If she thinks your answers indicate that you were raped, then it's off to the emergency ward for some examining. If you're somewhat or greatly incapacitated from being raped, don't worry. A police woman will drive you to the hospital, not a policeman. Over the next few weeks, if your answers don't fluctuate too wildly, you'll probably have to take the witness stand and testify against your rapist. Again, here's where you might have to field some delicate questions, this time from the defense attorney, maybe even from the judge. If, in the opinions of enough jurors, the evidence and your answers and your demeanor add up to true victimhood, it's a conviction. Then it's off to prison for him, and you try to piece your life back together. Note, after reporting your rape to the police, your rapist has a 50% chance of being convicted of that rape charge or pleading guilty to a charge of sexual assault. Either way, he's behind bars for a while, got to register as a sex offender if and when he ever gets out. All this and more, sourced in my notes. So the phone interview is a half hour, maybe an hour, and telling the police might require a dozen or 50 hours of talking or writing about your rape, a trip to a health clinic, and more. But these hours are spread out over months. Sure, a victim is going to think a lot about her rape after telling the police, but wouldn't a rape victim who didn't tell the police also think about her rape a lot? Why then the hesitation? There's just something about a phone interview when there's something else about lodging a complaint with the police, and they're so radically different. Perhaps part of what makes these two so different is that usually only one of them involves the invasiveness of a rape exam. Again, I've never been raped, so I necessarily have to substitute approximations. Have I had a hernia exam? Yes, a few times, once even by a female nurse. A bit impersonal, a bit weird, but survivable. Have I had my prostate examined? Digitally? Yes, by male doctors only. Again, weird. With all this modern medicine piling up around us, just wowing us with its modernness, sticking a finger up a butt? That's the only way to go. Oh well, we just have to live it. Excuse me, pardon me, something just got omitted. We don't just have to live with it. Well, not all of us. We men just have to live with it. And maybe a bunch of yawning just happened over there in the peanut gallery. Fine, be insensitive. Myself and many other men like me are trying to end rape, but just the second I mention a disagreeable medical procedure that involves only male patients and our doctors, I get big lazy stretches and wide relaxing yawns from certain YouTubers, and you know who you are, some even looking at their watches while wearing slightly irritated expressions. Thanks. Thanks for your reciprocation. But maybe that's just it. Could it be that a rape exam is just as discombobulating to a woman as a prostate exam is to a man? I could be wrong, but I'm leaning heavily toward no, probably not. Huh? For all intents and purposes, or rather, for all she can tell from her place there in the stirrups, isn't a rape exam pretty similar to a pap smear? It might take a little longer, because the former involves photographing bruises and contusions and such if they exist, but wouldn't locking up your rapist be worth it? Note, I explore in my footnotes varying rumors of lengths of rape exams, if yearly gynecological exams are themselves a form of medical rape, and more. And as always, I could be wrong. Feel free to clue me in down there in the comments section. But what about a colonoscopy? Haven't had one yet, but I imagine some might feel as though, hey, ice cream. But I imagine some might feel as though modern medicine inserted a very long phallic-shaped object way up one's anus in an often quixotic search for polyps. Plus, when you're completely under, anything goes. A lot of trust. I mention colonoscopies specifically because here's a procedure that men and women might have both experienced, and then these women can inform us men how it compares to a rape exam. This could lead to more understanding between those who've been raped and those who haven't. Also, it can enlighten those of us who wonder how exactly a rape kit could be so debilitating/disagreeable that the positive features of avoiding such a degrading exam just might outweigh the negative features that an actual rape victim attributes to phoning the police. Really? It's that much more involved than a breast exam or a pap smear? Now, if she thought she had an iffy case to begin with, and then after contemplating just how sickening it would be to have another women who are medical professionals, pawing at her all afternoon, and inserting, and I'll spare you the visual, and inserting a speculum into her, even though her yearly was months away, and female cops asking again and again questions that dug at the iffiness of what had happened to her, then who knows? Bottom line, no matter how despicable a rape exam might be, in this country, if you want someone to go to prison, the government needs a reason to have one of its taxpayers, in effect, receiving rather than paying taxes. It's not up to those accused of rape to have to prove they're not rapists. It's up to rape victims and to those who help them present their evidence to convince juries that the defendants did indeed rape them. Rape kits are all about collecting convictable evidence. I don't want the same guy who raped you to rape my sister. I want him behind bars for a good long while. So instead of you worrying about the insensitivity of a rape exam, oh, it feels like I'm being raped all over again, just please go through with it. Submit to the rape exam, please. You're not just doing it for yourself, you're doing it for other women too. Or, at the very least, if you're not going to go through with the rape exam, at least call the cops on your rapist, but then refuse to do the rape kit. Don't let the horrors of a rape exam be the tipping points. Don't let it stop you from at least calling the police. Your limited testimony, along with, say, 5 years hence, another woman's complaint against your rapist just might land him in jail. So, again, why do phone surveyors uncover so many more rapes than the police hear about? Part of this difference could be attributed to the reaching out factor. For a survey, you just pick up the phone. They reach out to you. But with the police, almost always you have to reach out to them. Perhaps if the rape squad regularly reached out to us, a few more rape victims might turn in their rapists. How about this? Extend the statute of limitations for sexual crimes to, well, maybe unlimited, and make information gathered from these surveys legally admissible in court. and just conduct away survey after survey, positive responses to rape questions are soon followed by a knock at the door. Rapist soon on his way, or that phone perjurer soon on her way to prison, or at least a trial. Results? I hypothesize, here's this again, I hypothesize the FBI's numbers would increase, probably dramatically, and the numbers academic researchers gather would decrease, both getting closer to each other's estimates. Another part of this difference has to be attributed to differing incentives. On the one hand, the rape squad gets paid to hear about rape, write it down, verify that DNA processing protocol is met, and more. But after they spend so much time listening and writing, if they don't think it's a winnable case, well, they're not paid to do what a therapist does. A rape victim might think hers is an airtight case, but if the DA sees otherwise, there probably won't be a trial. Here's where a national rape fund would be nice. A fund where donations go to trial lawyers who argue selected iffy cases in a place where the burden of proof isn't so demanding, namely civil court. If successful, sure, the rapist won't have to do time, but at least she might win enough of a settlement to start a new life elsewhere. And here's that other hand. On the other hand, a researcher who surveys over the phone gets paid in two different ways: completing the present survey and laying the groundwork for a future survey. Not enough of a positive response during the first survey, and there might not be a second survey. Positive response in this example, a rape survey, necessarily dictates getting a lot of women to say they've been raped. What I'm saying is that if a surveyor's numbers are ballpark just about the same as the FBI's numbers, why pay researchers for more of the same anytime soon thereafter? It's obvious the FBI is doing their job, accurately counting rapes. Why waste the taxpayers' money basically duplicating their numbers? In court, there are reasons why leading questions are sometimes not allowed. Leading questions can accomplish a lot, too much. Saying to a phone surveyor that somebody raped you usually doesn't involve risking being convicted of perjury. Moreover, saying you were raped 2.9 times in the last year neither triples that risk nor triples the amount of time you'd be sentenced to if convicted of, for lack of a better term, phone perjury. When a surveyor designs her own questions and, in effect, gets paid for yes answers, it shouldn't be a mystery as to why so many more women say yes on the phone but stay mum when it comes time to talk to a policewoman. Mary Koss asked college women if they'd been raped, and of the ones who initially said no, 73% of them, if asked in a different way, changed their answer to yes. After that eye-opening survey, how a researcher worded her survey questions became one of the most important, if not the most important aspect of the whole acquire grant, survey, publish findings process. In other words, you word it differently, you get more positive responses, which subsequently increases your chances of securing your next grant. All in all, there are plenty of reasons why numbers gathered over the phone are different than numbers gathered by the FBI. Many important rape-related facts and trends have been uncovered by the anti-rape wing of the feminist movement, and many of these over the phone. Mary Koss gave us date rape, for instance. Its coinage and widespread acknowledgement has led to a tremendous decrease of rapes on campus. This is all well and good, or, well, it was all well and good before it became an industry. Quick overview of the next few minutes. The before stage? Definitely in arrears. The infant stage? A good thing, a great progressive movement. The current stage, or what the anti-rape industrial complex is now? A little too big for its britches, and in need of refinement. Toss out that baby with the bathwater? No, of course not. Movement just needs a little help. Before, a complaint in the wind. You might hear about another one years later. The voices of millions of rape victims, each complaint shrill, adamant, and alone. Her complaint, rather, is alone or atomized. No structure, no national database with which to get the attention of legislators. Local concern? Yes. Her immediate relatives, friends might get revenge or cry with her or etc. Soon enough, though, Everybody just goes about their lives. Prevention? However many individual success stories there were, rape still spread faster than knowledge of this or that preventative technique. Punishment? Corrections administered by the tribal council or leaders or government, obviously and verifiably not enforced enough and or not severe enough to discourage future rapes. Spiritual leaders? Praying, that's P-R-A-Y-I-N-G, but not slowing down the praying, the P-R-E-Y-I-N-G, or, well, certainly not slowing it down enough. Clearly here was a concern in need of a movement, in need of organizing. When you're atomized, you're essentially powerless. When you're atomized, you're an inchoate organization right before it becomes an organization, which will happen, organizing, if enough of the atomized recognize each other as allies. Which is to say, all that power, the power to significantly lower the number of women who get raped, is there for the taking. It's yours if you organize. And so it came to pass that women organized. Great things and not so great things started happening on that very first day. Realizing you're not alone? Good thing. Establishing a database? Great. That database being recognized as legitimate by more than only rape victims and or only women? Again, great. That database replacing some of the hysteria, histrionics, with some legit science? Awesome. It lending scientific credibility to the idea that rape is a lot more prevalent than what conventional wisdom would have polite society believe? Beautiful. Or how about this result? Because of the anti-rape movement, we can now talk about rape in preventative ways around the dinner table. Is that a great development or what? I'd say such conversations have greatly helped to reduce rape. Cost turning the corner on date rape? Wonderful. Take back the night candlelight marches? Good exercise and shining a light on a problem. Taking steps, literally and figuratively, to end rape. An infant learning to walk is given a lot of latitude, a lot of leeway. Before it became the anti-rape industrial complex, the anti-rape wing of the modern American feminist movement was very progressive. Some call it the second wave or the third wave, what have you. But like many great movements, power tends to corrupt. The latitude afforded it as an infant has been accepted as a given by some of its more freewheeling members, and now it's a bigger, more demanding child, kicking and screaming if it doesn't get its way. Vituperation scrawled on placards at protest rallies does not have to face the rigors of scientific analysis. Some of these kicking and screaming messages contain the kernels of great ideas, but these ideas await the laboratory. As outlined earlier, though, there are other ways that members of a newly accepted field can misbehave, and these ways are not acceptable. Not if we taxpayers have to foot the bill, and not if how they kick and scream is to thumb their noses at the scientific method when it suits them. If it were art, that'd be different. But certain leaders of TARICO are actually changing public policy, and as such, they need to be set to rights. May I opine that members of an organization who can so nonchalantly oscillate between science and pseudoscience are more into grabbing power than they are into fixing problems? Note, what this power is, what this power grab is, and how it works against women, well, against all of us really, will be brought more into focus in my final chapter when I discuss, for instance, how some ought to accept and salute labeling theory the way they accept and salute the law of gravity. Which is to say, they'll mention postulates of labeling theory as if they were indisputable and in an accusatory way to school administrators and the PTA if a teacher, for instance, calls their 6-year-old daughter stupid. But when in line at a Walmart, and when that line grows too long, and there's a low-income male in line in front of them, many of these same women who believe in the powers of labeling theory will signal toward him with their keys, which is to say, they'll label him as a rapist in an effort to get him to hurry up, to get out of line, to go off and die somewhere for all they care, because as a low-income male, he can't afford the price they charge to spread their legs, and as such, if sex were to happen between key shake and key shake E, it would only happen under conditions of rape. Therefore, he's a rapist as far as they're concerned. They shake him because they know he'll never have enough money to be able to pry open their legs, and he's in line in front of them. Shaking keys in this instance is about wielding power in an offensive way. It's not about defense at all. You're still learning how science works if you think you can turn it off and on like that. If it's wrong to negatively label your child as stupid, how is it not wrong to negatively label a low-income male? How is it not wrong to, with your keys, call him a rapist? Anyway, that and more soon to be explored. In these videos, I have shown some of the inconsistencies within the anti-rape industrial complex. If one hastily sampled from this series, one might be under a false impression that I see zero redeeming qualities within this complex because it's become just another bureaucracy, and then it's now too corrupt to fix. Yes, it's problematic, but it's not hopeless. Here's why. Those interested in the scientific method tend to gravitate toward vacuums. Right now there is a vacuum between the truth and what certain feminist researchers would have us believe about rape. Other feminists, or perhaps even women who don't identify themselves as feminists, are sure to see these holes in logic, and they'll want to fix and amend and otherwise rectify. Sidebar. What I'm trying to articulate here is if the ideas in the woman with 1.5 hands do make the rounds, it's a lot more likely that a woman or women will lead the charge. She or they will soften a few of my hard edges and substitute words like security for my words that point toward all of us doing things we don't necessarily want to do to acquire the money with which we can do the things we do want to do. Yes, I prostitute myself every time I fake like I really give a crap about my manager's widgets. Even the rich have to suck it up, say, during their soirees, in order to maintain a certain status. And panhandlers, they have to play nice, i.e. prostitute themselves, when asking for alms. Another reason TARICO is not hopeless, and is far from being ready for the recycle bin, is that it's actually added one big feather to its cap recently, namely, the FBI redefined rape. Due to the incessant squeaking, if you will, of those against rape, that wheel finally got some grease. Not since 1927 has the FBI deemed it necessary to change how it defined rape. After interpretation and implementation of this new definition, our national crime statistics will be different. In my opinion, I think these new stats, after a short period of working out the bugs, will indeed reflect a more accurate representation of crime in America, and a strong, steady, unified voice from those in the anti-rape industrial complex helped to bring about this change. Way to go, TARICO. Here's the old definition. Quote, the carnal knowledge of a female forcibly and against her will. End quote. And as of January 2012, here's the FBI's new definition of rape. Quote, the penetration, no matter how slight, of the vagina or anus with any body part or object, or oral penetration by a sex organ of another person without the consent of the victim. End quote. Projected results? Mostly good, at least in comparison to the usual fare we atomized little ones have to accept from huge national entities. What had been labeled forcible rape in the FBI's annual crime reports will now be called rape. Added to this category will be instances of non-forcible statutory rape, which should increase the numbers in the rape column by 3 or 4%, if trends discussed earlier hold. Snared? My example, that 45-year-old who screamed with that 15-year-old on board that roller coaster at Disney World. Him being snared is a good thing. Let's call that one rape. Again, thank you FBI and thank you TARICO. However, also caught in this same net will be many 21 and 22-year-old males who are dating 17-year-old females. They love each other, but if her parents don't like him, look for his part in their love affair to be recorded in a national database as rape. Oh well, state and local laws will not be changed just yet, as this is only a record-keeping move by the FBI. Or so it says in their report. Crimes like anal rape, forcible oral sex, rape with a foreign object, a woman raping a man, a woman raping another woman, a woman raping a child, a man raping another man, various types of forced sodomy. These used to be categorized under violent crime or aggravated assault, but now will be listed under rape. But adding these offenses to the rape category will increase its numbers is axiomatic, much deserved, and a long time coming. However, I can't help but harken back here to a wonderful sounding bill that a few years ago received overwhelming confirmation from both major parties in Congress and was quickly made into law, a law that George Orwell himself, were he alive, would undoubtedly agree had a wonderful, wonderful name. Since its extremely rare speedy passage into law, though, the Patriot Act has increasingly come under attack by many, many patriots. Patriots who are true to the ideals of this country. Patriots who are truly patriots. As doing more than superficially bringing up the Patriot Act is beyond the scope of this project, I've saved a more in-depth analysis of it for the addenda. My point in bringing it up here, though, has to do with asking if there is a downside to the FBI updating its definition of rape. On the surface of it, we non-rapists have nothing to worry about, right? We can only hope. We can only hope that what happened to our Fourth Amendment after it got amended by the Patriot Act doesn't happen to Americans who have never raped, and therefore really should have nothing to fear via this new federal definition. So far it would appear to be nothing more than a bookkeeping move. Any further speculation about abuse can only be premature. Oh, and here's some backstory. Some of the woman with 1.5 hands was inked out longhand before the FBI updated the definition of rape, and some after. Predictions of how this redefinition might affect overall statistics can be found in my notes. And that's all I have to say about that. For next time, Part 10, or acceptable collateral damage? Yeah, that's the title of it. There's a question mark. Acceptable collateral damage, question mark. Really? Acceptable?